What's up, friends? Welcome to episode 82 of Into the Necrosphere. On this installment of the podcast, I am doing a half-time 2021 review of all of the best releases of the year so far, all of the releases that were a bit of a disappointment, as well as a bit of a chit-chat around some of the stuff that's coming up that I am most looking forward to. I know that last week I mentioned that Yardley of Rejoined was going to be scheduled to join. We had a bit of a mix-up in timetables, so that is going to happen at some point down the road. But in the meantime, I needed to put out the bat signal, and the beast that stepped up to the plate was none other than Nathan Glover of Graveir. He, of course, was on the show alongside Chris, their drummer, back on episode 71. Really, really fun episode, and this one is no different. So if you enjoyed that episode, if you enjoy badass music and loads of trash talking generally, you're going to have a lot of fun on this episode. No reviews, no demos, no news this week, just music and spoken word the old-fashioned way. Please do remember to hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you listen to, whether it's Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and you too can experience the thrill and excitement of that new episode notification popping up on your phone, tablet, or other mobile device every Tuesday. And best of all, it's free. I'm never going to ask you for any Patreon donations or anything like that. All I ask is that you like, share, comment, subscribe, and if you really love the show and you want to strut the streets showing off both your exceptional fashion taste and your love of good podcasts, then head over to the Teespring store and pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie or a jogger today. There's plenty to choose from, and if you tag me on social media when you're wearing those, I would greatly appreciate it, and who knows, I might even reach out to you and send you a little surprise in the mail. And no, it won't be a bag of burning poop. That is pretty much it. Not a very long intro. I'm not going to fuck around for any longer than I absolutely have to. I am going to tell you to pour yourself a beer, pour yourself a coffee, depending on what time of the day it is. Sit back and enjoy. This is my halftime review of 2021. So welcome back to Into the Necrosphere, sir. And as I said to you before we hit record, when I put out the bat signal, you were one of the few and the proud that answered the call. So I really appreciate it. I had a couple of scheduling issues. I've actually had a couple of scheduling issues with Yarley of Ride generally. So hopefully that interview is still going to happen. But yeah, it was either going to be, me talking to you, me canceling an episode, or me sitting here like Johnny No Mates talking about talking about God knows what. So, and as we know, the rabbit holes that I go down when I do the news section, leaving me to do that for an hour is going to probably be career limiting, and may well limit the audience of the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on again, Jackie. Appreciate that. He's hoping you don't regret skipping the episode.
No, mate, I definitely won't do. So what my thinking was is, since we are just about at the half-year mark, and I think it's been a pretty interesting year for music so far, I thought that what we could do today is talk about all of our favorite releases of the year so far. Maybe talk about a couple of things that have come out that have disappointed us a little bit, and then also talk about what we're looking forward to for the rest of the year. So I mean, I've got a list here, but there's, mine is in absolutely no particular order. But I think it'll probably, none of it will come as a surprise to anybody who listens to the podcast, because I do talk about some of these bands an awful lot. But just as a general commentary on the year so far, I feel like 2020 to me was like one of the high watermarks for extreme music. And then I thought, there's no way the 2021 can beat it. But as much as I don't feel like it's been like this, you haven't had these weekends where there's like 5-6 just insane releases that come out, and you feel like you're spoiled for choice. But I do feel like, in comparison to 2020, the steady trickle of quality since pretty much the very start of the year, this year, has been pretty epic.
Yeah, look, I think I'd probably echo that, to be honest. And I was, funnily enough, the first question I was going to throw to you is how you felt 2021 was generally as an overview. To some extent, I think if you look back at the history of extreme music generally, It's usually difficult times, whether social, political, or otherwise, that tend to make for good music. Even back to Black Sabbath and sort of the industrial parts of Britain and sort of the harsh times of working class, or even now in countries that are more developing that you see have fairly extensive and healthy extreme metal scenes. So I think to some extent, people being locked away and shifting sort of political situation is creating that unease, and as a result is kind of driving people's creativity. So I kind of see 2021 as a bit of an extension of what we saw in 2020. So yeah, I'm expecting, thus far, you're right. I think there's been lots of good releases, and I think we'll see plenty more to come.
Yeah, and it's definitely, like I said, it's been a steady trickle. It's like I don't think there's been a single weekend where there's not been something that comes out that I go, okay, this is really really worth getting my teeth sunk into. And I think also with 2020, to your point about the reflection of the times and of the social atmosphere and the political atmosphere, 2020, obviously a lot of that music was written pre-COVID. Whereas I think a lot of what's coming out in 2021 is obviously stuff that people wrote and sat on whilst they were locked down. So I think that's also been interesting because it's definitely, from a black metal perspective, it's made for some fucking insane music. And you do kind of get that sense. I've noticed it even in movies. There's this claustrophobic sense in a lot of the films that are coming out where, because they had to shoot during lockdown, because they couldn't film any busy streets or anything like that, everything is quite insular and the film's almost quite introspective, regardless of what genre it is. And I feel like a lot of the music is like that as well. People were cut off from each other. The only way that they would have been able to practice is, Zoom calls. And, I can imagine that's not exactly going to work. So the music itself has a more kind of closed off feeling. But I think it's a perfect reflection of the time. Certainly some of the records that I want to talk about. But again, I think just steady trickle of really, really, really cool stuff, and really, stuff that's really excited me, and less disappointments than there were in 2020. Although the year is not has got some runway left. There's one band that came out yesterday that I'm sure we'll talk about, or brought out their new single yesterday, that we'll definitely talk about. And frankly, I can kind of cut it two ways on that one. And in fact, let's talk about that now. So we're kind of hitching the cart before the horse here. But new Dark Throne single that came out yesterday, Hate Cloak. Did you listen to that?
I haven't got to it yet, but was definitely on my list. So kind of interested to see what you do make of it, because I feel like Dark Throne, as much as they've kind of, even in their early career, run through death metal into classic black metal, into more like crusty punk stuff, into, I guess, their more recent incarnation, are one of those bands that shift. And I think when you do shift a fair bit, there is that ability to succeed spectacularly, but also disappoint along the way in the process. So I'm quite curious to see what you did make of it.
I will say to you, as my personal opinion, is drastically lower your expectations before you listen to the track. It's for me, it's 9.5 minutes of a band who sound like kids practicing in their parents' garage, and I would wager a very hefty bet that if it didn't have the Dark Throne label slapped on the front, I think that maybe 20 people would pay attention to it. It's a difficult one to assess, because I've spoken a lot on the show about the fact that I preferred when bands do something that they were inspired to do versus something that they felt obligated to do. Like I felt the last not Dark Throne, the last Nell Nathrak record. I felt the downfall of that record was it was Nell Nathrak by numbers, but it certainly didn't sound to me anywhere near as inspired as the Codex Necro, Eschaton, or any of the older stuff. It sounded to me like a watered down version of the band. And I don't know whether that was, maybe that's what they wanted to do, but that was my takeaway. And I know I'm deeply in the minority on that one, but be that as it may.
I'd be inclined to agree with you, actually. I think probably post Eschaton is where I kind of dipped out.
Oh, really?
I think what was missing for me was the same thing, was that sense of urgency that that was there in the early albums that I particularly enjoyed.
Yeah. I liked. I mean, I liked everything up to the whole of the law. I liked. I think it was called the New Horror as well. I mean, I generally liked everything that the band has done. I just thought In Darkened was just. It reminded me a little bit of like Latter Day Slayer, where Slayer basically after Seasons in the Abyss sounded like Slayers doing what they think that they should be doing, not necessarily what they want to be doing. But then equally to your point, I think if you listen to Codex Necro and you compare that to basically anything beyond Eschaton, I mean those I'm sorry, but those records can't hold a candle to that album. I mean that just is I said it yesterday on Instagram. There was a time where there was truly none more necro than than an El Nathrak. And those records absolutely still hold up. Codex Necro and Domine non est dignus, just absolute fucking masterpieces. But getting back to the Dark Throne point, so I respect the fact that they did what they want to do, and that they did what nobody expected them to do. But I a part of me wishes that they would just not do this as Dark Throne, because it as much as they definitely have earned the license to do whatever they want, and they can, they ultimately they are Dark Throne, so therefore they should be able to release whatever they want under that name. It just doesn't sound like Dark Throne. It doesn't have the same vibe. It doesn't have the same atmosphere. It just sounds tired. It sounds like there's it sounds like guys that are just fucking around and they go, okay, well, we've got some ideas. Let's just record a record and be done with it. I mean, the vibe that you got off Hate Them. I mean, I won't even talk about the first records, because we know how influential and how massive those were. But, stuff like Hate Them, even what in my opinion is a very underrated Dark Throne record, Plague Wielder, it's just gone. It's non-existent. I mean, and some of the crust punk stuff I could still kind of get into. But this new record, to me, it's a step down from the previous one, which I also didn't enjoy. And so I would say, as I said, if you have any real love for Dark Throne and you're expecting something exciting, you best you best seriously bring your expectations down.
Well, I'll go in. I'll definitely pick it up, but I think I'll interesting. I'll go into it and see what I make of it. But it's definitely on the list.
So let's start then with some of the albums that came out this year. And again, I think if anybody's watching this on YouTube, then they would see that I'm sporting the threads of, I think, one of the most exciting, philosophically brilliant bands on the face of the planet right now, and that's Werewolves. Proud ambassadors of Australian extremity. But like I think if you talk about a band who's capturing the times perfectly in all the wrong ways, it's these guys. Like total political incorrectness, total middle finger to literally every single thing on the face of the earth. And what I love about them so much is that they have the ability. I think you and I spoke about this when you were on the podcast last time, like about Australian metal kind of always just being slightly off center or like off axis, but having kind of all the hallmarks of the genre that it's playing in, but just it sounds very distinctly Antipodean. I think Werewolves is has nailed that. They've managed to come up with a sound that incorporates, or that sounds modern, but has the vibe of old school death metal and old school black metal, without sounding like those bands or sounding like they are trying to sound like those bands. It sounds like Matt is riffing the way he is comfortable and a fucking master at riffing. Sam is doing his thing as a vocalist, which again, he's a very distinct sounding, even though he doesn't sing or have all sorts of crazy shit that he does, like Travis from Cattle Decapitation or Attila or anybody like that. He sounds extremely distinct. And then, Dave drumming like a fucking madman. But I thought that What a Time to Be Alive, their second record, I think is as much as I love the first album, it's a massive step up from what they did. It's darker, it's meaner, and just what a fucking great way to start the year. Just a record that immediately sets the fucking benchmark for anything in the death metal genre that was going to come up so high. It's like they sort of threw down the gauntlet and said to everybody in the scene, "This is what we can do in a week. Let's see what you've got."
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought Werewolves up, because that was definitely one that was on my list. So a good place to start off. And I'd also noted, similar to you, that I feel like what they've done well is captured the, if you want music that reflects the current times, I think this is just an upfront statement of where things are at, and looking at this album, you got song titles like I Don't Like You, Antisocial, and Unfathomably Fucked. You're like, yeah, okay, that sounds about where we're at the moment. So, um, they've really hit on that, and on what's happening, I think, and tapping into that vein, and just with their pedigree as musicians as well. You know, they've taken something that they've almost decided to be as primitive as possible, but they're so good at executing it that it just puts people to shame. They could almost do this stuff without trying, but it's that good. Um, it is. It's just savage. There's no two ways about it, and I think it is going to be a hard bar for a lot of people to follow.
Yeah, I think you can play as technical as you want, and bands are going to do some stuff that is in the death metal scene that'll be crazy and outlandish, but it's just not. It's they're going to have to do something fucking extraordinary to top this. I mean, this to me is like on a par with Dying Fetus doing Wrong One to Fuck With, which for me was like, for a while, that was the true high watermark in post 20, probably post 2000 death metal. I think they've just done something extraordinary. And I think when Matt first talked to me about the project, and he was talking about kind of the philosophy behind the writing, which is basically like, it's this very spontaneous way for songs to be created, where you kind of writing music, you're not self-checking, you're not overly critical, you just you're writing and recording what's coming out of you spontaneously. I think it just works for him so fucking well, because all of the songs, it all has these, like, it has these hints of stuff that he's done before, like Belligerent Intent, Akrikaka, even Berserker, but it's all kind of wrapped up in this fresh, I'm trying to think what the right word would be. The fresh packaging that is fucking brilliant. As I said, and especially this new record. It's dark. It sounds like a big step forward, and I'm super excited to hear what they do on album number 3, because I know album number 3 and 4 are pretty much done. I'm not sure about 4, but I know 3. I mean, they've posted about it on social media. Is more or less done. And
If
what I
you,
would love to hear more of is that dark shit that they have on this record. Like, They Will Pay With Their Own Blood, Traitors and Bastards. Those are my favorite tracks off the album, and that's like the dark stuff that I really enjoy.
yeah, and if you know anything about Dave Haley and his work rate, he's got 1,000 things on the go at any one time. So it's really not a surprise to me that he's got 2 albums already pretty much in the tank. So, but having said that, everything that he puts out is super high output. So, um, I don't expect that they'll be any different. But I think you did touch on a good point around the songwriting process, in that I think there's a certain freedom that comes with not second guessing yourself as well, and just running with what you've got. And I kind of wonder how many good ideas have been stopped or shut down by people overthinking things.
Yeah. Yeah, I would strongly agree with you on that, because that's always like, when you hear a band like Mayhem just brought out this single, and the track was recorded during the Demon sessions. It's going to be on this Commando EP that they're putting out, but the song is fucking brilliant, and you think to yourself, like, I wonder how many tracks like that were recorded and they just don't ever get released. They just sit on a hard drive somewhere and they never see the light of day. And as much as the band might not have been into it at the time for whatever reason, actually, when a fan hears it, it's like, Jesus Christ, this is fucking genius. I mean, I would say this new track would be on a par with some of the best stuff that they had on Demon, which to me was a masterpiece. But I totally agree with you. I think there's a lot of very good ideas that go by the wayside there. And side note on Dave Haley, so I was first introduced to his work through the first Amenta record. And I remember speaking to Eric of the Amenta for Chronicles of Chaos, and we were talking about Dave. And the question I asked him, because at the time it was like promo CDs and stuff, and I don't think they even had on the promo CD the credit for who the drummer was. So you listen to the drumming, and it's so, especially for the time, so insanely technical and fucking nuts. You think there is no way a human being can play this. And I asked Eric about it, and he said, "No, that's our drummer Dave, and I can assure you, he's not a machine." So, it's that dude as a drummer is, I think, one of the great underrated drummers in extreme music and any genre, in my opinion.
Yeah, and look, I mean, on top of that, he's obviously got direct touring, so he's running a major touring company for metal shows as well. I don't know where he finds the time, to be honest. I'm not quite sure that he isn't a machine, to be quite honest with you.
I like people like that though, because I run pretty hard at the best of times in terms of my time. Like my day job takes a good 12, 13 hours out of my day. I've got my daughter, my girlfriend, everything else that I need to do. I've finally gotten my training back to a regular routine now. And so every time I do feel a bit tired or I feel a bit lazy, then I look to people like that to go, okay, if that person can do this, then so can I. So shut the fuck up about how tired you are and get on with it. But as a segue into another fucking fantastic Australian release this year, I mean, the Amenta coming back with Revelator. I know a lot of folks didn't like the Sia Money single when it came out, and they were like, what is this? Doesn't sound like the band. I thought it was excellent, but where they've taken the band on this new album for me is fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's like they've taken every single thing that was great about the band and they funneled it through this prism of that's kind of more creative, more free, but in some ways for me it then means that when they do get aggressive or they do bring in a lot of the abrasive elements in their sound, it's that much more effective because it's not like this constant barrage of it. It's this build up. It's like if you watch a horror movie and it's wall to wall gore, like opening credits, people already getting their heads chopped off. By the end of the movie, you kind of, okay, there's another decapitation, there's another person getting sawn in half. Whereas if you have something like, I'm trying to think of an example that's not Hereditary because I keep pointing back to that. But a horror movie that has that one shocking, like Bone Tomahawk, that one shocking moment, dude gets grabbed by the cannibals and chopped in half. You watch it and your jaw just fucking hits the floor. That's really the only truly gruesome part on the film. But because it's once one and done, it's that much more impactful. I kind of feel like Revelator is the same thing. All of the really brutal stuff that they used to do is much more measured now, and when they deploy it. But when they do deploy it, it hits really, really hard. And then all the other stuff that they're throwing on top of that is just makes it that much more interesting. What your thoughts on that record?
Yeah, it's one I haven't spent a lot of time on as yet. I did obviously check out the singles, and I did like the fact that they added a few more layers and elements to their sound. And actually, for me, the more, I guess, straightforward, sort of industrially black metal stuff was probably in some senses, it was good. I enjoyed it, but as you say, it's almost to take a musical example, it was a little bit like transitioning from. It was the issue I had with the early Hate Eternal albums, going from Morbid Angel. You got these songs that have a lot of dynamics and range and know how to slow down and speed up. Whereas the first couple of Hate Eternal albums will just blast all the way through and
Yeah.
almost disappointing as a result, which I think Eric's corrected in future iterations that he's done. But, to me, this is almost the same thing that I think, they were very aggressive and it was all about creating that constant pummeling, but actually adding the extra elements that they've added in on this record is adding an element of like a sinister atmosphere and a sense of unease that when, as you said, when they do sort of explode in those more violent parts, it's creating something a lot more interesting from a songwriting perspective. So the reason I hadn't actually spent too much time with it is because I wanted to sit down and really sort of deep dive into it. So I am looking forward to it. But what I've heard so far, is one that, as I said, I want to spend a bit of time with.
It's definitely an album that you need to listen to from start to finish. It's not a record that you put on in bits, because it was sequenced in a way where all the tracks seem to kind of flow into the next one, and it does so very, very well. So I would definitely say if you're going to spend time with it, make sure it's something that if you've got a decent pair of headphones, you've got a good hi-fi, sit down and listen to the album from end to end, and it's very rewarding. But I think phenomenal. I think the best record in their career, and I've liked every single thing that they've put out. But this, to me, it defied my expectations in many ways, and certainly from as an album that I that's come out this year that I've come back to again and again. That's definitely been very, very high up on the list. It's like I said to you before. As the year progresses, I normally tend to add stuff to my Cobuzz playlist and my YouTube Music and my Tidal playlists. And then always one of the first criteria that I use when I'm kind of looking at what my favorite albums of the year was, it's, of all of this, all of it is good. I wouldn't have saved it if it was not good. But what is the thing where when I'm busy with work, I'm busy doing something, and I go, what do I feel like listening to? What is the thing that I default go back to? And the Amenta, and Werewolves actually were two records that I just go back to again and again, and I never get tired of it. All right, I'll pause there. Let's hear some of your picks for the year.
Yeah, I've got a fair few, so let's see where we go. Actually, I might start with one that I know that you is probably going to be in your disappointment bucket, but let's go there anyway because I'm interested to see see what you make of it. And that's the Ruins of Beverus, the Thule
How
Grimoire.
dare you?
I thought we butt heads on this one.
I knew it was going to come up today, but yeah, fire away.
And to be honest, in your defense, I was when I first heard that first single, that Cromlech Nell, I was a little bit suspect on it. I wasn't necessarily a big fan of it. It had a very strong typo negative vibe, which I know it's sacrilege to say, but not a band that I'm a fan of. So,
Oh, really? Oh, no. See, I'm a big fan of theirs. So, on paper, that shouldn't have bothered me at all. But that song actually didn't annoy me. But anyway, you go ahead first, and I'll tell you my thoughts.
yeah, so this is the part that I actually thought was quite interesting. But I guess similar to what you'd mentioned around the Amenta, Ruins of Beres are definitely a band that are very much a whole of album band. I don't think singles have ever done them have done Alex a lot of favors, even though he's released plenty of good songs. And I think he said himself he really writes that all of the material to sort of flow as a whole album. So once I listen to the whole album, everything kind of atmospherically I feel fit together quite well. My favorite work of Ruins of Beverest is Phallus Demon of a Sheltered Elite. Just horrible seasick guitar tones and nice use of effects to just color in a bit of atmosphere. And I think this album gave me more of what I wanted. Every album is different of Ruins of Beverest, so you're going to get a different flavor. But this was the album that maybe harked back closest to Phallus, which had all the elements that I liked. So for me, it's probably my second favorite.
Mm-hmm. So I get why you like it if you like Phallus Demon, because generally speaking, almost every comment that I saw on any post that I did about this, or reviews that I saw, people reference that record as this kind of sounds similar, or it's in a similar vein. And I don't know if it's because I loved Exuvia as much as I did, and I had just impossible to. I mean, Exuvia to me is one of. I'm gonna at some point I will do a special on my favorite albums of all time, and Exuvia is in the top 3 without a shadow of a doubt. I think because of how much I love that record, because of how peaked my expectations were, frankly, I'm not sure he could have put out anything that I would have thought is as good. I think my biggest issue with this record is I feel like there's two things that I don't like. One, some of the tracks have bits on them that sound genuinely cheerful and happy, and I don't like cheerful music. I don't like major chord music. I don't like anything that sounds happy. I'm not a miserable bastard, but it's just how I am. And I think the other thing that I don't like about it, there are some songs to me that sound pieced together, where Exuvia, everything sort of flow. He's always written progressive music and long songs and complex tracks and stuff, and everything but everything in Exuvia flowed together. Whereas I feel like on this record, it sounds to me like somebody that wrote a piece and then later on, almost selected a different piece from something that he had been jamming previously and went, okay, this fits in quite nicely there, so I'm just going to stick it in there. I think that Cromlech Knell has that issue, particularly towards the end of the track. Deserts to the Bind and Defeat, the last song, without a doubt sounds like that. There are good tracks on the album. I think Ropes into Eden, the first song, is fucking brilliant. And that Mammoth Polis, I think, is fantastic as well, even though it's kind of more of an interlude than it is a song. But it just to me, it's an uneven album. The mood of the album is uneven to me. Whereas Exuvia was this continuous journey that just kind of sucks you in and is dark and brooding and almost kind of the atmosphere is so enormous, it's almost suffocating. But that's kind of what makes it so brilliant. This to me just it just missed the mark on a couple of occasions. And if he had not brought out Exuvia, I would probably thought this is a decent record. I think that's the issue. I think if I because I've liked all of the stuff that he had done, but if the discography excluded Exuvia, then maybe I would have had a different view on this album. But I think this to me is kind of it's probably a bias because it's like the Lost and El Nathrak album. I know I'm in the minority. I've not seen a single person turn around and say that they didn't like the album, and I'm certainly not turning around and saying that it sucks. But it's not Dark Throne, or the new Dark Throne at least, but it's not an album. I've tried to listen to it so many times, and I keep listening to it going, what am I missing here? And I can't find it.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think the other thing is too, I guess I was sitting down and working through being locked down. I was spending a lot of time writing, so I got quite productive in terms of new Graveir stuff, and I mentioned to you another project that I've been working on. I kind of pulled together a bit, like really spent a lot of time trying to introduce a few more atmospheric effects and bits and pieces into not only into the Graveir stuff, but also into this other project. And I think just his use of guitar effects as ways to just color things in. It's quite tasteful, and I think on this album, again, he uses them quite well. So I think perhaps while I was in the process of working through the writing process, that was helping me to sort of guide not overusing, not being too excited by new toys and just pressing all of the buttons all at once, and really thinking about what I was doing a little bit more, just to help add elements. So that probably also gave me another deeper level of interest into it as well.
while still the blackness is complete. No vestige of sunlight can penetrate as far as this.
I mean, he is fucking phenomenal at what he does, and in terms of how creative he is, how many new elements he'll introduce onto any of his records, where you kind of sit back and go, "Fuck, I've not heard that before, or I've not at least not heard it done in that way." Um, but yeah, to a lesser degree, I kind of felt the same about the Last Inquisition album. I know a lot of people like that album. That album, actually, I will say, is a load of shit. In comparison to the one that came previous, which is perfect black metal, the last album to me sounds like the ramblings of a tired old man who's pondering his sex offender, who's put his name on the sex offenders register.
Yeah, I haven't been too. I similar. I've heard people say good. I've actually heard a few people who really enjoyed it, but it's just not something I've been super excited to pick up, to be honest. So
No, I thought, for me, Bloodshed Across the Empyrean Altar is one of the best black metal albums of all time. But I thought this new Inquisition album, as much as I was looking forward to it, again, maybe it's because of how much I love Bloodshed, but I thought it was a load of crap. I didn't like it at all.
So I think this next pick will be. We got the controversial one out of the way, so I think this next pick we may agree a little bit more on. So the next pick that I had was the new Spire album, Temple of Kronos.
Oh yeah, so that was actually next on my list.
I think we'd agree.
Another in the what is turning out to be a golden year for Australian extreme music, mate.
Yeah, and look, Spire, I guess, hail from Brisbane as well. So a band that we've played with on a number of occasions, and this was just a massive leap forward. You could almost see the elements of what they could do. Maybe not always necessarily on the Spire albums, the earlier Spire albums, but I know just the vocalist, some of the work that he'd done on early Consummation stuff, and watching them live. We'd be employing a lot of different vocal techniques that weren't always as apparent on the early records. You could kind of see what they would be capable of, but this album, they just got so much more expansive with the songwriting, more adventurous, particularly with the vocals. To be honest, the first time I heard the first song, it took me a little bit of time to readjust. Like I was having some issues getting into it. But once I sort of got past that first song and got locked into what was happening, I couldn't take my ears off it. It just draws you in. There's just so much, and you just want to absorb every little detail out of it. Really impressive, to be honest, and I hope it does big things for them, because they're always an excellent band. But I think this album, they really show just exactly how good they are.
I agree with you, and I definitely feel like I think more ought to be made of this album, because I think that it's in a way similar to what Alex von Maidenwald does, where it's taking extreme music into new territory, and I feel like it's forging a path for heavy music to go into the future, where maybe it's not gone before, and that is more exciting. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bands that are guitarist, bassist, vocalist, drummer that I think is excellent. I mean, we've just spoken about Werewolves for 20 minutes, but Spire, to me, I think is doing something that is not only excellent, but I think, frankly speaking, quite important to the longevity of the genre, and also it's what makes the genre as exciting as it is. I always feel very dubious about people that say, "Oh, there's no real good metal coming out at the moment." I used to be into it, but all I listen to now is stuff that came out in the '90s. It's like, are you fucking nuts, man? Like I've been into this music since I was 9 years old, since 1989, and almost every year now for the last 5-6 years, I've been blown away by just how much great stuff comes out. And we'll talk a little bit in a little bit about stuff we're looking forward to this year. But it always seems to be newer bands, young bands coming out. Like last year, it was Selps, Diversio Humanitatis. Ecclese have been around for a while, but I mean, they brought out a fucking phenomenal record. So it's always these bands that you kind of don't see coming. And Spire was one of them as well. I agree with you. I've had them on my radar, but I never had them on my radar to a point where, like now, if a Spire record were to come out, it would be an event release. Like it would be something I genuinely look forward to. I really think they have established themselves now as definitely a band to watch. And again, as I said, fucking insane how much good stuff is coming out of your fair nation, mate.
Must be something in the water.
Yeah. So I'll talk about one that caught my attention. I'll touch on this briefly. I don't know how big a fan you are of this type of music, but I think I loved this so much because of how I wasn't expecting anything, and it was actually a rare weekend where the weekend was quite quiet for decent new music. But there's a record called Kill Grid by Enforced, which is kind of like thrash hardcore crossover. And there's nothing particularly original about it. I mean, they sound an awful lot like Power Trip. I love Power Trip. Maybe that's why I love Enforced. But I just thought this record was fucking brilliant. And you made the comment earlier about werewolves, and that the idea isn't necessarily groundbreaking, but the brilliance lies in the execution. That's exactly what the deal is with these guys. I mean, they're not doing anything that you haven't heard before, but they're just doing whatever it is they're doing exceptionally well. So I don't know whether that's your cup of tea, but I thought I would mention it either way.
Yeah, look, I'm always on the lookout for new bands, as you know. So I hadn't actually heard that one, but hope you don't mind, but I've opened up my little list of things that I need to check out, and I'll make some additions as we go.
Dude, I have an ongoing list. I always anything that you send me, I always put on that list also. So it's I always have at least 7 or 8 bands that I have to look into at any given time.
Yeah, look, that's definitely
make notes.
Been one of the advantages of having to look after a playlist as well, is that it forces that activity. Sometimes it's hard to actually sit down and spend a lot of time with an album, but yeah, look, it's one of those things that stops you from doing that thing that you said, where you go, look, there's no more good music out there. You're literally trying to go and find it, and bring some of that stuff to people's attention. So it's been a valuable exercise.
Yeah. So another one that I really like that I think you may potentially be into yourself, Forest. They put out a record, or he put out a record on Debu Morty, who are just, I don't want to keep on talking about how great the label is, because people think I'm getting paid to say so, but I mean, they're just a label that never disappoints. And this year has been no different. The record is fucking brilliant. It's old school. It's got a real old school second wave Norwegian black metal vibe to it, but through the lens of Bluthaus Nord, which makes complete sense given the fact that it's the Bluthaus Nord man's band. But I fucking love the album. Love it. It's got every single thing that I want from kind of a throwback band, where you have that old school sound, but through just a slightly different prism. And I think the nature sounds and all of that stuff, which is obviously a kind of a throwback to some of the early Ulver records, I think works really well too. I think the album just as a whole is brilliant, works from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm glad you had that one on your list as well, because I'd also note that one down. And I think Vinzval really knows how to write an effective song. Whether that's the more industrial stuff or the more black metal stuff, and I don't think this album's any exception. And to some extent, I think it is really just a pure love letter to old school black metal. The melodies on the album are incredible, and I think the other element is just what I noticed about the album was it has just the right amount of everything, like the right amount of reverb, the right amount of rawness, the right amount of clarity to let those melodies be at their most effective. So it really is, to me, a love letter to black metal, but really an exercise in almost like a master crafted exercise in bringing all those elements together and being so good at that construction that everything is working to help serve those songs. So yeah, I was very impressed with it.
Yeah, I think your description of it as a love letter or love letter to Norwegian black metal, I think is a great way to describe it, because it's very, very clearly what it is. Another great black metal record, Woad, Burn in Many Mirrors. This has been a real kind of this is an interesting one because I don't know if it's just in the UK, but I certainly got the impression there was some buzz around this stateside. But Woad have been around for a little while now. They're not the most active band when it comes to releasing new music, but they put this out, and people have just lost their shit over it, and understandably so. It's a fucking fantastic record. It's the most ambitious thing they've done. It's the most well realized, I think, version of Woad that they've put on record. And again, as much as it's not necessarily a game changer for the black metal scene as a whole, I think it's going to be a game changer for them. It's a shame that they're not in a position where they can play these tracks live. But I think in terms of Woad and their position on the UK black metal scene, which continues to thrive, in my opinion, this sort of, I said it at the time, this throws them right up there in my view with the tip of the spear of the scene locally. And then for me, that spear is absolutely tipped by Crimson Throne and by Abduction. And I think Woad can kind of stand pretty comfortably alongside those bands based on what they've put out with this record.
Yeah. When did that album come out? Because I know that I'd been looking for it, but is that out currently, or is that due out later this month?
So that came out on April 2nd on $20 spin.
Okay. I need to add it. I was on my list to buy, and I haven't got around to it, so I'm definitely keen to check that one out. And I really enjoyed their first album. And in actual fact, I think the UK is somewhat underrated when it comes to black metal. To be honest, there's a lot of good bands that come out of there that just seem to fly under the radar. A Forest of Stars is actually one of my favorite bands, which, again, UK based, and everything they put out I love. But I don't think the bands seem to get as much attention as others for whatever reason. Then you've got things like Code and the rest too that it's almost odd. It's almost like there's a little bit of a stigma on UK black metal, and I don't really know where that stemmed from because I think there's more than enough good bands. It's just people knowing where to look.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a great scene. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the ability to create atmosphere. Crimson Throne are masters at that. I mean, their debut of Void and Solitude is a superb record. But last year they put out this EP called Isolate Decimate, and there's these. It's just ambient tracks. There's this one particular track that has this sort of piano interlude on it, which is. I mean, frankly, I don't know how anybody hasn't given Dan Thornton a contract to score a film or anything after that, because it's such a beautiful and such a stirring piece of music. You can't imagine actually it's coming from a black metal band, but if you understand Crimson Throne's music, it makes perfect sense. But again, we'll touch on this later. But in terms of stuff I'm looking forward to this year, I know they're working on new music. I think he said it's more likely that something will come out in 2022, but should it come out in 2021, I mean, that'll definitely be top of the list of things that I'm excited about. That'll be on this year's lineup. I'll talk about one more, and then we'll go back to you. So I did want to bring this up because we spoke about death metal earlier, and there was a lot of hype about this record. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to talk about. So Cannibal Corpse, Violence Unimagined. Is this their 16th or their 17th record? I can't even remember. I liked this when it came out. I mentioned before that my top albums are always what I want to go back to again and again. And as much as I like this album, I've had, after the first 3 or 4 listens, I've just not had the desire to listen to it again. And I don't want to feel unfair to the band, but this is probably the best Cannibal Corpse album that they've put out since, in my opinion, Evisceration Plague, which actually is a record that I still go back to from time to time. But I don't know if it's just growing older or what's wrong with me, but they just don't seem to be a band that has anything to offer me anymore. I'm not interested in gore lyrics at all. I think there's maybe it's part of becoming a parent or something like that. But I as much as I like horror movies, and I don't have any issue with whatever anyone wants to sing about, unless it's some overtly racist or bigoted nonsense. But gore lyrics just don't really do anything for me. And like I said, as much as Eric Rutan brought like a little slightly different vibe to it, when I compare Cannibal Corpse to Werewolves, there's a spontaneity and an excitement to werewolves that I experience that I just don't have on Cannibal Corpse. It just they none of their music over the last 13, 14 years has been able to have the same effect on me that either of the two werewolves records have done, or Dying Fetus, or any of the death metal bands that have interested me over the last decade or so.
So here's maybe a couple of thoughts on it. Do you feel that Cannibal Corpse obviously have had a long career and a lot of albums, but they've always been fairly consistent in terms of their sound? So on that note, do you feel like the albums that you come back to all the time have somewhat already been put out? So how much need is there for the additional ones once you've got that, particularly where a band's been very consistent? And I wonder if that's part of it. And I guess to the point of the werewolf stuff, when you have been consistent, do you lose a bit of ferocity and a bit of that spontaneity where werewolves, because they're doing everything spontaneously, and they're obviously, it's a project they're excited about in the sense that they've got the energy to do it. They're not really, they don't have that business mechanism behind them. Like, they really are just a bunch of friends pumping out the most caveman stuff that they can, to the abilities that they have. Whether that just makes it feel a bit more exciting than a band that's had 16, 17 albums that have all been fairly similar. It's not like there's been a major departure in their sound.
Yeah, so I think what you're touching on is the ultimate question is, do they have anything creatively left to say? So I would contrast it thusly. If you look at another veteran band, and I mean, I know the guys in Werewolves are veterans of the scene, but it's not a veteran band. Another veteran band, Napalm Death, versus Cannibal Corpse. Napalm Death, with every record they release, seem to do something just a little different, or a little new, or a little unexpected. And as much as they still sound like Napalm Death, there's always something that catches you just slightly from left field when you listen to an album that they do, which I think, to their credit, is fucking brilliant. Because I think it's I've said it many times before. I think in terms of his ability as a songwriter, I think Shane Embry is one of the most underrated people in the scene. I think, and I think the day he hangs up his bass guitar and finally shaves off the skullet, I think is the day that people are going to realize what they've lost. But anyway, that being aside, if you compare those two bands, I feel like Napalm Death has plenty of creative juice in the tank, whereas Cannibal Corpse, they've got one sound, and they're all about refining that sound on every single record. But there is no appetite, nor will they ever add anything different. I mean, they're basically the AC/DC of death metal. And as much as I love, Highway to Hell and Let There Be Rock and albums like that, I am never going to not listen to those albums because I fancy listening to Stiff Upper Lip or Power Up instead. AC/DC, again, creatively ran out of things to say, in my view, after Fly on the Wall. And Fly on the Wall is an album I know people don't like, but I love. But I think beyond that, did they really? They released Thunderstruck, brilliant song, and the song that got me into metal. But did they have much else to say creatively after that? Not really. Kind of same. It was sort of the same with Slayer. They had the odd moment of greatness after Seasons in the Abyss. 213, I think, is a superb song. I think there's a couple of songs on their other records that are good, but for the most part, I mean, stuff. Are we really going to think? Are we really going to say that Disciple or Jihad or any of this other shit they put out post 1990 is holds even a slight candle to South of Heaven or Rain in Blood or Dawn They Sleep or Black Magic or anything like that? No fucking way. Cannibal Corpse are in the same boat, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that if an album's on, I'll enjoy it, but it's just I won't necessarily go and look for it. For me, I just go back to Bloodthirst and put that on repeat and listen to it, and then I've got pretty much everything that I need out of it. So I can understand why perhaps that's your response to the new record.
Yeah, and as I said, it's not because I want to set out to hate them or be different or anything like that. I'm always excited about a new Cannibal Corpse album coming out, but I just feel like, as I said, I just don't know how much they've got left to say anymore. I mean, definitely lyrically don't have anything left to say, and I don't think that musically it's much different. Anyway, as people tune out and hit the dislike button and unsubscribe from the show, let's segue back over to you, mate.
Yeah, so back on the point around the UK black metal scene, the next one here, I'm not sure whether you heard of this one, and I feel like this one was a little bit under the radar, but one that people should definitely check out. So it's a band called Sea Mosquito. The record's called Fire, Magic, and Venom. So it's just a one track, sort of 20-25 minute piece. Real sort of atmospheric black metal, but it just takes you. It's so well constructed. It just kind of takes you on this journey the whole way through, and it goes through various shifts. It's really hard to explain, but it is almost like listening to like a concept album in an EP. And I don't think anyone's really heard of it, but it's again an example of these small bands that are under the radar that are doing stuff that's actually really, really exciting and interesting to listen to, but just not necessarily having that audience. So actually, and maybe the name is also another thing that might not initially lead you to think that it's some scathing black metal, but I was glad I kind of checked it out because it was kind of one of those surprise hits that you get that is well worth doing. The last time I went to a show with a band that I didn't really know anything about, was thinking of skipping. It ended up being Depart, who amazing band, and ended up being reasonably good friends with Disho, the singer. But again, if I had just gone, I'm going to skip the support band, I would have missed something that was really quite fantastic. So this is almost the same.
I was like that way back in the day with at a Death Angel show. Death Angel was one of those bands that had kind of passed me by, and because I was into black and death metal more than anything else at the time that I had the opportunity to see them live, I can't remember who was on the show. I think it was I can't remember Dysphere. I don't think it was Dysphere actually. It was a Dis something band or Disbelief, and then Darkane, and then Death Angel. And I was there to see Darkane because I really liked the record they brought out at the time. And I said to my mate, we'll stay for like one or two songs, Death Angel, and then we'll fuck off. And within like half a song, we just looked at each other and it's like, oh my God, these guys are good. So it's the best, and this is a sidebar, but it's the best when that happens when you go to a show, and it's something that you know, especially at a show for a band you don't really know the music of, and they just blow you away. But Sea Mosquito, though, I mean, I know mosquitoes are, truly the spawn of Satan, but I don't know how you get up on stage going, hey, everybody, we're a sea mosquito, let's fuck this place up.
Yeah, it is a bit of a strange choice of name, I will admit, but I think, and maybe you'd be interested in your thoughts on this, but as a fan of music and extreme music as well, one of the most exciting things about checking different things out is just those rare finds that you get that you would have totally missed otherwise. And those are the things that keep you still excited about bothering to check out new bands and listen to new things and make you go, okay, well, music's in a good state, whether it passes me by or not, that the creatively it's very healthy. So this is one of those moments for me, to be honest. So definitely one that I've spent a lot of time with, and for it to be one big long piece, you do have to sit down and engage with it. It's not something you can kind of switch on and put on in the background, which I think is good as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's true of most good metal. I don't think metal has ever been designed to be background music. It's foreground music, and you need the best records. There is no great metal album, in my opinion, that you can say, well, what really works with this album is if you invite mates over for a barbecue, just have it playing in the background. That's the perfect way to experience this record. No, it's not. There's no such thing as a good metal album that you do that. All right, next.
So the next one is one that I've recently sent to you. It's a recent release, which is a band from Sydney called Burial Pit. The album's called
I did listen to that, and I did enjoy that very much.
Subhuman Scum. It probably applies to that title could be applied to a few people.
Awful lot of people. Although there's also a Alan Partridge. I don't know whether you're an Alan Partridge fan. There's an Alan Partridge scene in, I think, season 1 or 2 of his show, where somebody, I can't remember if they dent his car or something, and he calls them subhuman scum. It's like, they're scum, Len. Subhuman scum.
I tell you what, being from Australia, I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps that's where they've got it from too. Normally,
possibly,
a bit of sense of humor about us. It's just the album's so heavy, that just so full of riffs. If you like stuff like Primitive Man, this is going to be up your alley. Everything's just bone crushing. There's I think the third track, Lord of Limbs, there's a section where everything sort of stops and the vocals are saying, like, punish filth with filth, punish pain with pain, rip the throat from the squealing pig. And I always put that album on before I go to training. So Lord of Limbs, and then go in and hopefully, I don't know why. At the moment, the training's been going good and I've been rolling very well and submitting people quite a lot. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but I like to think that it does.
pain with pain. Rip the throat from the squealing pain. Cancer of the world, created its funniest. It's the stay on the spaces.
Now, I've not been doing any martial arts. I bought myself a banana bag that I've emptied out one of the stables here and hung it up there, so I can do I can do a decent bag workout on that. Like it's a good banana bag. But I've actually just been doing weights. There's a dude I found on YouTube who, unfortunately, he's a vegan, but that I'll forgive that because he's also very funny and his training methods are fucking excellent. And I've been doing the stuff that he suggests, which is not no real game changer, but it's just like he builds a lot of his workouts on giant sets, so multiple exercises, very little rest, and yeah, very very good. I mean, seriously, fucks you up. I've got until December to lose a pretty substantial amount of weight because I'm hopefully, if South Africa is not on the red list, I'll be on the beach, and naturally, you know, there'll be thousands of shirtless photos of me floating around. So I need to be prepared for that. But yeah, that burial pit record, I agree with you. Very, very cool. Speaking of like a gem from not entirely down under, from New Zealand, but I think this is going to be probably an undiscovered gem for a lot of folks, unfortunately. But the Blindfolded and Led to the Woods record,
Yes.
I thought was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, again, it's just that you know, I think they've taken that death metal kind of idea, and even though their name kind of makes you think they're going to go full gore, and I think to some extent there's a little bit in there, but there's just that sort of Australian, New Zealand sense of humor to it. It's very
Yeah.
tongue in cheek, but the music's so good. Like technically, it's extremely good. I was quite impressed with that album as well.
Right, I'll chuck another one at you, and we're getting to the business end now of the year. And this is where, like, I've said before, I'm basically right now. If we were in December and we were doing a top 20 of 2021, then this band is going to be either first or second. But Inferno, they put out a record called Paradigma, and this record to me was everything that the new Ruins of Beverast was not. It was dark, atmospheric, adventurous, experimental, abstract, fucking grim, badass. I mean, there's parts of the record that I said, I think I said it when I reviewed the album way back when I was leafing through Nuclear Blast records to find stuff. You know, every so often there would be like this certain underground band where it would be like, you know, German description, and then all you would see in capitals is like total war, like thousands of exclamations, and immediately you knew this was a record worth buying. So it's like this to me. If this were 1997, that's exactly what I would be seeing. You know, Inferno, Paradigma, Total War, and it's such a fucking good album. And the only thing that counts against it is it's way too short. It's only 35 minutes. It sounds like it should be 65 minutes because it's such a grandiose, such an epic record. It's just a shame the experience is over so quickly. But I mean, when it's there, they just don't do a single thing wrong, and there's not a note that's wrong on this album. I mean, I'd have maybe have liked the vocals to be a little bit more kind of sort of to the center of the mix. I feel sometimes it's a little so far in the background you barely hear it. But fucking hell, if for anybody who's listening to this, if you've not listened to Paradigma yet, stop whatever you're doing and listen to it right now, because it is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, it's one I need to come back to. I enjoyed the first album, and I heard the single that they put out off the new album, and I really liked it. I was definitely a fan of their previous album as well. So I do have to go back to that one, as it is on my list, along with the Mantra. I do have a little bit of catching up to do, but yeah, there's normally those ones where I always find it where if they release a track, I'll note down that I need to catch up to it, and sometimes I miss when it's actually been released because I'm busy looking through other stuff. But yeah, it's definitely on the list to do. So it's one I'm quite excited for. I don't necessarily think that the short running time's not always a bad thing, though, right?
No.
Because if you want more, that's good.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with you. You know, always leave the audience wanting more, but it's like I wanted so much more on this album. You know, they feel like they're just getting warmed up. And one thing I also want to highlight that I listen a lot to drums, and again, as I've grown older, I tend to be less impressed by somebody who can play super fast and super technical than somebody who can really play with a feel for music. And I think the drummer for Inferno, the feel that he has for black metal is fucking astounding. You know, he'll keep it super basic when it needs to be, but I think that single you would have heard was Ecstasis in Continuum, or Of the Continuum. And
Yes.
it's like, you know, it has this like really like war, like very basic, like 4/4 beat at the start, and then as that song builds up to its grand finale, he just goes insane. It's like he's playing a fucking 2-minute drum solo, but just brilliant. There's so much emotion and so much feel in the way that he's playing, and it adds so much to the song. It means a hell of a lot more to me than somebody who's just going da 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 da, you know. As again, I think if it will take for that record and the next one I'm going to talk about, it's going to take a monumental effort for any band to get that out of the top 2 of my year. The other record is Cold Cell, The Greater Evil. My buddy Marco from Stellar Master Elite, he just sent me the track on Facebook Messenger with just an emoji with like 2 wide eyes, and I put it on, and oh my fucking god, is it good. I've had the band on my radar for a little while, but I was not prepared for what they've put out. Yeah, it's such a fully formed, fully fleshed out version of the band, and maybe the one thing where they have the edge over Inferno is the journey sounds complete, whereas the Inferno record, because of that short run time, it feels like it's come to an end too soon. But you know, there's a really kind of deep human concept to this Greater Evil record, and it ties together all of the tracks. Everything sort of fits in together really pretty nicely. They kind of remind me a little bit of Audacious, out of Lithuania, who put out a record in 2000, I think it was 2017, that I also loved. But they just do, they basically do that style of black metal just way better. Extremely well written songs, very catchy, very memorable, and they just don't put a foot wrong for the duration of the record. I think it's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, I did hear that song you put on the recent podcast, and I really liked it. So again, on that magic list of things that I need to go pick up. But I wonder if they're. I was kind of thinking a little bit like Sea Mosquito, whether the name makes people think they're like some kind of dungeon synth or dance band or something like that.
Cold Cell to me sounds like a new metal band. I mean, frankly speaking, like the first time somebody introduced me to them, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, new metal.
Yeah. Then you listen to it, and it's it was unreal.
Well, but the record basically starts like Anathema on a bad acid trip, and then all of a sudden, Anathema turn into a bunch of fucking demon possessed lunatics, and all hell breaks loose. And again, something I love about them, their drummer and the way they've deployed rhythm on that album, they know exactly when to hit the high notes, like when to go fast. They almost use blasts to emphasize certain bits of the song, rather than just, I'm going to blast right from the very beginning of this track to the very end. Which that to me, I mean, that's part of why I don't like bands like Dark Throne anymore. Not Dark Throne, sorry, Dark Funeral. That basic, Swedish blast from start to finish. It sounds so formulaic to me, and I just don't see the point. If I've got 24 hours in a day, why on earth am I going to sacrifice listening to any of the fucking great bands that we've just spoken about now over something that people almost expect you to listen to because they have a big name in the scene?
Yeah, I actually saw Dark Funeral play live with Immolation, and I think the problem was they played with Immolation.
I saw them with Crisian. It was the same deal. Crisian, I mean, I know people are going to say, yeah, but you talk about a band that just blasts from start to finish. Yes, but they do it very well. Again, I totally agree with you, or echoing what you're saying. They played with Crisian. That was one of the biggest problems.
Yeah. All right.
That being said, I've seen Crisian play with Behemoth, and that was
thing.
Behemoth's problem also. I mean, they fucking mopped the floor with them. You can't believe that those three Brazilians can do that to a band that has the grandiosity of Behemoth. But I mean, they made them sound like fucking chumps. How do you try and sound evil after Conquerors of Armageddon? The kill, Lord Jesus Christ.
No, they've been doing it for a long time, so not too surprised there. I think Christian a little bit underrated in some regards.
Fuck yes. All right, back over to you, mate.
So the next album I'll pick is an album called Plurs by Presages. I think they're Canadian from memory.
They sound Canadian.
Very sort of crushing, black and death doom, but it sounds very urban. It's got a very concrete, industrial feel, almost like a curb to the face. And the thing that I really like about it, like that oppressive atmosphere, it almost has a similar feel to Ulcerate in some way. It's similar sort of atmosphere, but not necessarily doing the full-on sort of technical thing that the Ulcerate are doing, but just that oppressive focus on just building the mood and having that similar. To me, Ulcerate's another band that kind of sounds urban in some ways. It's got that similar feel, but the thing that I really like about it is the bass tone. It's probably the best bass tone I've heard for quite some time. It's just so thick.
I see the vinyls there in the background, mate. Do you have the system to appreciate the bass tone?
No, sadly not. Most of those vinyls are I've got a few of the Graveir vinyls and stuff too, so they're generally just for show, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I do need to fix that.
Oh, mate, you must let me know if you need some tips and advice on that. I it's a dangerous game. It was very expensive, but it's As soon as like there's a lot of stuff I learned as I got into it so I'm always happy to talk to anybody that wants to get themselves a system set up, because there's a lot of stuff I wish I'd known when I first started. You end up spending an awful lot of money on shit that you go, I really shouldn't have done that. I should have done XYZ.
Yeah, there's probably
I mean,
few people on the music thread that you might want to bend their ear if you ever want advice on hi-fi as well.
Oh no, yeah, mate. I've the system I've got now is ludicrous, and I've got my roadmap forward, but it's a bit costly. So I've got an engagement ring to pay for first and a holiday. So I
Everything
keep
is
teasing
time.
my girlfriend about it as well, saying that we're never going to get married because all he keeps spending his money on is a load of hi-fi shite. All right, let's do one more, and then let's talk about some upcoming stuff that we're excited about.
Okay, no trouble. Oh, there's so many to pick from. That was the problem. I think I had about up till now. There's probably about 60 albums that I brought that were released in 2021. So trying to narrow that down was a bit difficult. Probably the last one that I'll go with is a band called Graveir, and the record called Anthropomancy. And it's kind of black and death grind, Canadian as well. What I really like about it is it reminds me of old Cryptopsy, not necessarily in the way that it's technical, but just that feeling that it's odd, just like it's about to go off the rails, like the early Flo Munier, the way that he would drum. It was like a cardboard box rolling down the stairs, and the bass was planking everywhere, and you felt like it could all go off the rails at any minute. It's not, yeah, it has that same feel. It is, they are a HM2 band, but they're not kind of doing that standard HM2 clone sound. That they are using HM2s, but the way that they're writing is more in line with something like those early Cryptopsy records, like None So Vile. So yeah, definitely a fan of that. And again, a smaller band that maybe not many people have heard of, but interesting. I'll be keeping my eye on what they do in future.
Have you ever seen Cryptopsy live?
I missed them, unfortunately.
Oh,
Was
dude.
a show. They had Lord Worm on that tour as well, so unfortunately missed out on that. I regret it.
Yeah, I've seen them with Matt, and I've seen them with Lord Worm. I will say I actually prefer Matt as a vocalist, but it's the magic of Cryptopsy, seeing Flo play drums live. Jesus Christ, that guy is fucking brilliant. And I've spoken to him about coming on the podcast as well. He's pretty busy, so he's not had time as of yet, but it will happen at some point. Yeah, oh my god, I don't have words. You watch the dude play and you're like, where do you even start to get this good? I mean, without selling your soul to the devil. But right, let's talk about upcoming stuff. So I will mention one quick thing before we get to that. I don't know whether you listened to the last Impaled Nazarene, mate, but the genius of including that Oral Sex Demons viral video clip as the intro to their record. I mean, that immediately, no matter what happens in the top 20 of 2021, that they get honorable mention just for that, because it's just fucking brilliant.
just the intro part. Yeah, I did actually have a quick listen to that, and I did catch the start of it, and went, yep, it's Impaled Nazarene. Cool. I'll listen to the rest of it. Like,
Yeah.
You can set your watch to Impaled Nazarene. They're not the busiest band, but again, they're consistent almost. But I think unlike Cannibal Corpse, they don't, because they're not as busy. Like that same thing hasn't set in with them, where you're actually excited for the next release, because it will be a few years between when the next one comes out.
Now, writing those 3-chord riffs takes a long time, yeah. But no, they I think in terms of actual songwriting, I think their last 3 have been their best. I genuinely do. I know that's not the popular opinion, but I thought Road to the Octagon was genius. I loved Vigorous and Liberating Death, and I think this new one's fucking good as well. And as I said, made all the better by that viral video, which is, I don't know if you've ever gone to check out that guy's channel, but I looked him up when I was doing the review for Impaled Nazarene, and I mean, that Oral Sex Demons thing, that's the tip of the iceberg, mate. He's got one where he's apparently fighting the demon, but he's like air chopping and kicking and punching the air, and then the person who he's supposedly doing the exorcism on, they're like their head is moving as though they're being hit, but obviously he's miles away from them. And then finally he like holds his hands as they move down to the ground and faint slowly. It's so fucking bad. All right, so stuff that I'm excited about coming out this year. There's actually, weirdly enough, not a huge amount on the horizon that I'm kind of giddy about, and maybe again it's in part because experience has now taught me that most of the stuff I end up liking most in the year is shit that's new, or smaller bands. But I know for an absolute fact, because Nocios has spoken to me about it, Utkana are putting out a new record hopefully this year. They're busy working on it, and that was my favorite album of last year, so super excited about that. I know for a fact that Panzerfaust are going to put out part 3 in the quadrilogy, and frankly speaking, their last 2 were unassailable works of genius. So again, if you have World War II noises on a record, you immediately have my attention. The new Destroyer 666 got announced today, which I'm super excited about. I think it's called Never Surrender, which makes it even better. But I loved Defiance, and the last record as well. I thought was fucking superb. So I'm super excited about that. I was very excited about the last At the Gates. Or the new At the Gates, I should say. Sorry, not last At the Gates. But I think the newer single, it's not doing all that much for me. But the song they put out prior to that, I thought was very, very cool. And as much as that's not my typical kind of music, I've been a real big fan of the last few At the Gates releases. So I have high hopes. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, Voices should hopefully put out their new album this year. And I think that Voices, and if somehow they manage to get the Antichrist Imperium record done, then I think that to me automatically is always an instant contender for number 1. In years gone by, both albums they put out were my number 1 of the year in the year that it came out. So, I mean, again, Werewolves Pedigree meets Acrococker. There's no way that it can be shit.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be an interesting one. I guess I'm so busy looking at what's coming out currently. Often I'm not too far into the future around what's coming. But one that I was definitely looking forward to, which I think has literally just come out as we've been on this call, is the new Code one.
Yes, it came out today.
Yeah, I just got the notification while we were talking. So I was looking forward to that. Now it's out. So I'll be looking forward to listening to that probably straight after we jump off the podcast. But yeah, big fan and really enjoyed the pod that you do with Andrew as well.
What a nice guy, by the way.
Yeah,
super nice guy.
And he's over in New Zealand. So hopefully, if we get over there, maybe we can catch up for a beer. So that one I was looking forward to. The other ones are kind of smaller. There's a band called, I'll probably pronounce this wrong, because besides me. And they've got an album coming out called Eminence, which I had listened to it. It was almost like medieval style music in the vein of some of those bands that are on, I can't remember, the like Bindrune or something like that. But the vocals were off tap. The guy was barely enunciating what he was saying. It was kind of almost doing these medieval poems, but it just sounded like maybe like a peasant had got into the grain store and ingested a bit of psychedelic fungus and was just going berserk. That was really interesting. It's like a little thing that I was kind of keen on. The other thing that I have on pre-order as well is a sludge band called Erdve. I really like what I heard there too. It's just heavy and oppressive and everything that you want out of a sludge band, but also had that little bit of atmosphere that you'd want out of more like a black metal band. Again, just smaller things. There's always the big releases that will come out, but I think half the joy is finding small things that you haven't listened to before.
I agree.
So those are probably the nearest things that are on the horizon. but particularly that Code one.
Yeah, Code was a band that when they brought out the single for that, or the first single they put out for that new record, I went back and I listened to the previous albums, and fucking hell, man, you're reminded by just how good that actually is. Um, such a I mean, it was as a episode that did incredibly well for me as well. So there's clearly a lot of people that like them. They seem to be kind of like the best kept secret in black metal. It's like there's a load of people that love them, but almost no one wants to talk about it. That kind of thing. But I'm just going through the list of upcoming releases to see if there's anything that we've missed off of. And so far, I mean, obviously there's Fear Factory, Aggression, Continuum. I don't know whether you've heard the Trainwreck that was the 2 singles they've released off of that, but it was absolutely fucking atrocious.
I think their problem is that they have been continuing instead of calling it a day, unfortunately. I'm sure we all grew up on it, but I think at a certain point it kind of outstayed its welcome. That's just my opinion.
Very much so. And I recently listened to Demanufacture and realized that there's an awful lot of Demanufacture that's also shit. And also they are one of the bands with the worst lyrics. I mean, I don't like all lyrics, but I also don't like just basic bullshit lyrics. I don't like it when it sounds like a fucking 12-year-old that's just gotten into Korn writing his first metal song, and that's exactly what they sound like now. Look into my eyes and you will see I am not afraid of destiny.
And live, I think, live, I think, Burton's vocals were always a bit of a problem anyway.
It's one of the most terrible disillusionments of my life. It's like walking into your parents' fucking. As soon as you hear him on the microphone, it's like, okay, yeah, it comes. The first clean sung chorus, and it's like, oh, he's completely
put
off
it
fucking
back.
key. It's like, no, shut the fuck up.
Close the gate.
Yeah. I think the one time that I saw them twice, and one of the times he clearly had a backing track because it sounded perfect. But the other time they apparently having the backing track there wasn't in the budget because it was replaced by Dino's booze budget or booze demands. But my God, it sounded terrible. It doesn't look like there's anything else that is lined up. I know Paradise Lost potentially are going to have something new coming out at the end of the year, which I actually heard on the down low, so I might need to edit that out, but fuck it, I won't. But if that does happen, that'll be good. I hope it's a departure from the last record, because the last record to me was a disappointment. But they're also one of those bands. I always love them. Doesn't matter what they do. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything else. New Dark Throne obviously is going to be shit. New Mayhem is just an EP. I would have loved if they had included the because I know that there is a Burzum cover that they recorded when they did Demon, and they haven't included it on the EP. I was very disappointed about that. Maybe they feel like that's in bad taste, but it would have made me happy. I'd love to hear that. I mean, imagine how fucking cool it would sound if to hear Attila do Dunkelheit, or to hear them as a band do Dunkelheit. And again, talking about veteran bands that still have something creative to say, they even the albums that people don't like Ordo ad Chaos and Esoteric Warfare, I'm sorry, but if you go back and listen to them objectively, they're fucking fantastic.
Yeah, I think Ordo is one that people do tend to. I find it split. I think if you're looking for a more standard album, that can put people off the production. But I think that the diehards actually really, really enjoy Ordo ad Chaos.
Yeah, I remember being on the first time I heard that was on my iPod on the London Underground, and I remember just being completely blown away by it. I just sitting on the train, not really having expected much, and just my jaw just hanging open. It's like I didn't think they were going to put out a record like that. I was expecting more crazy blasting and stuff like that. And then to hear this album that's lo-fi and dark and mean, I thought it was magnificent. But what about Graveir, mate? Are we going to see a Graveir release this year, or is that next year's plan? What's the roadmap like at the moment?
I think next year's probably the more likely candidate. and so it was really productive during 2020, 2021. I think we had about 20 songs that we had to pick from for album 3, and I think 15 of them came from my desk. So I got super busy. So the work's kind of done in that regard, but it's just life stuff, people, having children and all the rest too. So and just that probably putting a dampener on things. We haven't been able to get together and rehearse, but we're ahead in the sense that the material's done. It's written. It just needs to be rehearsed and refined. So, but timeline wise, look, I think it's probably more likely to be a next year job. But that's why I've kept myself busy with this other project, and we also started a bit of a lockdown doom band with 2 friends of mine as well, which I still need to finish off. So you're probably more likely to see that other project come out this year. I'm kind of aiming for maybe back half of the year, sort of October, November.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, we're going to have to do another one of these at some point very soon. I know it's your Friday night. I sadly need to begin the drudgery of my professional working day, but mate, what a pleasure, and great seeing you in good health. And once again, man, I really appreciate you answering the call when it came out. I know it was super short notice, but like I said, had a fucking fantastic time catching up again.
Yeah, no trouble. You too, Jackie, and any time. And yeah, next time maybe we'll chit chat about your love of wrestling.
Well, yeah, we have to get to that. I realized on most of my recent episodes I've got some old school wrestling T-shirt on, so we definitely need to talk wrestling. And I think we probably need to put a good 2-3 hours aside for that, and have a disclaimer at the start of the video, like. We're going to be going deep on this one, and I'm going to be repeating a lot of my favorite promos word for word. But again, brother, thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak again soon.
All right, no trouble. Pleasure. Take care, Jackie.
Keep it real on the streets.
Will do. All right.
Freedom in various forms that we grown used to, and numbing decadence, some call for revolution.
So concludes my halftime review of 2021. What did you think? Did I get it spot on? Am I full of shit? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments of the podcast, or drop me a note on social media, and share with me some of your favorite releases of the year so far. But I had an absolute blast, and thank you so much to Nathan for stepping up at very late notice to do the show with me. He's one of those dudes where I think if the time zone weren't so limiting, he would be awesome to have on as a co-host on a regular basis. But yeah, Nathan, if you're listening, that's just about the biggest compliment that I could possibly give you. So thank you very much, and as I said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week, I've got a couple of different options to share with all of you. So I'm recording this on a Sunday morning. Last week, I spoke with Gavin McKinnelly about Stamping Ground, amongst many other things, and it whet my appetite to talk in a bit more detail about that band. So who better to discuss that band with than their former bassist, Ian Glasper. I'm actually I have a conversation scheduled with him for this coming Wednesday, and then later on in the week, Austin Smith of Drugoth is on tap as well, so that's in the diary. That's going to happen. And then I obviously need to reschedule Yarley of Ride. There's another interview that I need to reschedule. I've mentioned it a couple of times, Chris Canella of Deicide. So that's going to be fun as well. So lots of good things in the offing. Next week, I'll also talk about the new Code record. Nathan and I briefly touched on it towards the back end of our conversation. Subsequently, I have listened to it almost nonstop. It is absolutely phenomenal, and I'll tell you all about it next week. In the meantime, whatever it is you are doing, I hope you're safe and healthy. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. And there is no better way for me to close things off this week than to lay another Graveir track on you. This is off their fantastic record that came out last year, King of the Silent World. The song is called Carnal Bacchanalia. It plays us out today, and from my side to all of you, thanks very much for the support. Stay safe and healthy, keep it real in the streets, and I will see you bad motherfuckers next week.